Alrighty, guys. I know today's going to be something I said 13, but we got actually some breaking news that I wanted to come in and share with you guys. We've also have a couple of mods being added. Um, of course, I'm probably gonna might have to remove Beyond. Unfortunately, I can't use it. Because in California, there's supposed to be like the ferries are supposed to be available, and unfortunately, the ferries are not available. Um, because I wanted to show you guys that I'm pretty sure that if I took out, I want to take something. I want to try something. Okay, it still shows this here. So pretty much, basically, I'm utilizing these sets of mods. Okay, and beyond. I can still use, even if I took out Beyond, um, I'm basically dropping down by 7. By 6 of them, because Beyond has 2. There's a Beyond ProMods fix, which is good, and then I can use this without it, guys. You can use the West Coast ferry terminals. Just know that you will not have access to Palayu or anything unless you go to Washington, per se. And as you guys can see, I did ask questions about that through there. And then I also going to go over to Truck Explorer, okay? Just as a thing I did not realize. And as you can see, it's not going to show any of them because, as you can see, we now have the Cupid's hat, the Hearts blanket, the cable car, the Gnome, the Snowman, the Wooden Reindeer, the Christmas socks, the Winter hoodie, and decorative cabin lights assortment. Okay, so that's pretty much basically what got shown for that. So if we come in here, okay, so we could throw like a cable car up there, if we wanted to. Then we have the Cupid's hat. Now I'm pretty darn sure I can throw the Cupid's hat up here if I wanted to. I like the Cupid's hat. We've also got the Snowman Cup, the Gnome, and the Reindeer for the winter stuff. But the blanket is not going to show up because not every truck is going to have the blanket available. If I'm not mistaken, for it. Okay. And it's not going to change anything for it. So, I just wanted you guys to know that we did get some of that stuff. I will probably throw in the trucker's hat. But I'm not going to throw it in yet. I do now have more cities available for us through Arizona now. and it's not a lot of cities. It's just a little bit extra for us to travel. New Mexico doesn't have a lot of cities, nor does those. Um, Now, since we have about a month and some odd days, um, that we have Iowa, Missouri, and Louisiana. Any money that I do get from, because my birthday's coming, I do need to get a job though, of course. Um, and a job is important. Um, and that's one of those things um that I do. And I'm gonna tell you guys from this point forward, um, um, that um, tomorrow that I'm gonna tell you this. It doesn't matter. Um, I basically will tell you if I pick American truck or I pick Euro truck, I'm going to pick one or the other. Playing video games, talking about content. We're going to talk a lot about the OS side of things. Um, and I'm going to do the cargo market, per se. I'm in Tacoma. TV's going to play you to PLW, right? Which is going right up there to play you. I don't care, per se. But that one's going to British Columbia. That's going... You know what? We're just gonna go with price. So, merit, yeah, dynamite, but I don't want to do dynamite. I don't know why we're going that way. But we're gonna go... up there, and let me go and tell you guys that that we have like four pieces of news that really pertain to a lot of what's going on um, within the United States, and for anybody who is oh, am I just dumb? Am I just that dumb? Dumb. Dumb. And it's this one right here, and I just missed the turn. Cargo. We're gonna take beverages for it, but there's three things that I'm going to talk about today. Mainly four, but actually, yeah, there's gonna be about four things that I'm gonna talk about. Um, that I wanted to share with you guys that are going to that you guys are gonna need to know. Okay. But primarily, um, so anyway, the primary one, you guys probably already know the title by a couple of these, is the OS directive. The problem with this um, uh, and then we also have not only that issue, but we also have some other things with Kristi Noem getting fired, and then a couple other things that um, really are pertaining to rights, as in, you know, what is it going to pertain to the rights of basically the Save Act, is getting into portions that I don't like, that are even being more added to it. So it's really, today is mostly talking about your rights and things, to be honest. And the Kristi Noem one, I'm gonna get that one right out of the way. And that one's pretty much basically, Kristi Noem basically has been doing a poor job at what she's doing, and has basically been fired, moved to basically not really necessarily fired, just made more or less left, is leaving the job and then going into some other spot, some like Florida thing or whatever. I don't know exactly the other job title that she's apparently going to be getting. And of course, this does not bother me that she's getting fired. It actually is a great thing that she's leaving the job. She's not somebody that I support, not somebody that I am willing to stand up for. And I'm somebody that the job is getting, it's ridiculous what they're doing. And it's also getting ridiculous that basically that somebody else is going to be just slightly a little bit more right in the head, but still going to end up doing the exact same thing. Don't remember his name. Is now going to be taking her job, and what he's going to be doing is pretty much basically probably going to keep doing the same thing Noem was doing, except this time he's just going to be more competent about it. He's just going to basically and I can't remember his exact name, but he's from Oklahoma. For it. And not only Kristi Noem, but he's basically on that exact same spot. That he's basically went up and lied straight to our faces, saying that he's a military guy, that he's this thing, but he's not. He basically inherited a plumbing business from his dad, pretty much. Inherited a family business. Now, that's nothing wrong with inheriting the family business. Okay? It's nothing. That's no issue. But what is an issue is the thing that he's probably going to do, and going to take this DHS thing seriously and remove a lot of things within basically keeping up with allowing for ICE to continue to do what they're doing and make it even worse. It could get worse, it could get better. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. But unfortunately, if you are living in the state of California, though, and you are absolutely somebody that is for being able to have some freedom and being able to take care of your life, with technology, or being able to control how you do with your technology, basically, you're not going to get that now. Not only is it, like I said previously, a lot of these states that are saying, oh, you're required to have ID to access certain content on the internet because deemed problematic. I know I failed to visit the way station. I don't care. I will occasionally do things like that. But if you go and look at the state of California, or just in general, the state of North Dakota, South Dakota, you name it, the problem that I have with this, with all of these age verifications and things, I hate age verification. I hate this problem. I said no. I said, if you're somebody out there that's saying that you're advocating for ID checks and having those ID checks to access certain content on the internet to saying, oh, it's the protecting of the children. It's not protecting children. Okay? you're not going to be protecting children in any way, shape, or form. Okay, that child is not going to get any protection. And things like that. But there's going to be this one thing that's basically that's going to require you to put in an ID of some sort in all these things. You're not protecting children because once you put that ID out there on the internet, you're now having the attack vectors for your ID being taken, and for your ID to be taken away from children, taken away from kids, and identity stolen to the point of where it's going to harm kids, going to harm even yourself even more, because there's some state out there, like for example, not some state, but some country like China or North Korea, or doing that to take your ID and utilize it to utilize your identity and making use of it to be here on US soil, and say, oh, they have this, they can just recreate these IDs, or use it to create a online presence and just drain your accounts and find every way that they can to ruin your life. Okay? And they can do that. Of course, it's like you want to prevent having kids having access to it. It's called, first off, it's already called going to these it's already called going to your OS or going to your router and enabling parental controls. It's that simple, that easy to do so. Not every router has it, but maybe instead of requiring access to certain content, you let your child have access to it. Okay, fine. But what's the point? The point is they want to do it in the bastion of protecting children. They always do this. They always say that they're always doing this with guns. They're always doing this with these X, Y, and Z, requiring kids to have access to these content. To content they want to restrict it, or they want to do it in the protection of children, and those things. But look, letting a child have access to content on the internet is one thing, okay? And not wanting them to have it. But it's another requiring IDs because of it. And then now California, not only with those IDs being like in almost some of these states, like North Dakota, South Dakota, and some of these other places, I'm not being facetious when I say that we've had an instance with Discord. It's not going to stop at Discord having that access, because remember, there is so many there's so many ways for bad actors to have access to it. And within California now, I know I'm jumping all over the place, but now California is requiring dates to be used by OSs. And I'm pretty sure that all of this is probably because of Microsoft. Okay? I am pretty sure some hand in one of these big tech companies like Microsoft wanting to get more of your data, wanting to have more access to everything, and being able to sell it in any way. And basically, all this is doing right now is an OS that requires you to have a birth date. That's not protecting a child. That's just overbearingly overreaching and requiring IDs to be now checked at the, or not checked, but the birthdays to be checked. All these kids have to do is just lie. And lying, it is gonna, okay, so you're gonna lie. Then it's just basically it's overreaching, and they're starting to take, they're doing it to say, oh, we don't want kids to have access to the adult content, but then we don't also want kids to have access to this content and that content, and it starts becoming a slippery slope. Okay, if you don't want a child to have access to it, it's called enable those parental controls on your routers. Enable Cloudflare if you if you even I wouldn't recommend it, um but you can enable Cloudflare, and when you enable Cloudflare, I'm using the 1.1.3 protocol, you can then give access to that child to prevent that child from having access to adult content and preventing you from having viruses on top of it. Um, if you add the .2, it's basically just protects you from so, and it's in no way, shape, or form is any of this protecting children when there's already tools out there that do it. And let me be clear. Um, if you don't want a child having access to it, because they're gonna find ways. Kids are more tech savvy than you think. Okay, trust me. I know, because I was one of those kids that got around these blocks, got around all these things. Like, kids know more than some of these adults, these 70, 80-year-old adults, 60, 70, 80-year-old adults know how to control these technology. I'm 30 years old. I know a lot more about technology and utilizing a lot of these things. I've been using technology for years. And and it's like I've gotten around these blocks. And I don't. And look, let me be clear. I don't live in these places that are uh in it, but I live in a state that does not have blocks on these content. Okay, I live in a state that actually values a little bit of that. Now I don't know how that's gonna change. Um, with it in the near future, but I will tell you this, that if a child has some light or some needing some protection, then you have ways of doing things. Kids are still gonna find ways around it. They always do. Okay, and that's just it. Okay. And that's the truth. And you can always prevent a child in a lot of ways through that. Not only that, you also have, just don't let your kids have a phone. Don't let your kids have access to an iPad. Don't let them have access to these things. Okay? That's the easiest and simple and easiest thing you can do. And if you aren't willing to take care of your kids and let those kids have access to iPads, then you are not a good parent. If they are in those tablets and those things, they're not gonna have no. If they're like in 4th or 5th grade, maybe you start letting them ease up on those restrictions a little bit, but you take control and being that parent. If you don't want your kids having access to it, do it that way. Don't let the government decide for you. Okay? You have the right to make that decision. Don't let a child I did not realize I was speeding. Jeez. Yeah, we're up there with it, and it's just like, I know I've beaten this around the bush, and I know there's a lot of, I know I've beaten this to death where I've talked about a lot about it, but you know, and it's one of those things that you want to prevent a child. I get it. I understand. But it's the whole point of that, if you wanting to prevent a child from having access to adult content, then but you don't want to let a child have, but then you don't want to get rid of guns at this point, just because it says it's a Second Amendment, but yet you don't want to take care of the kids and protect the kids. Then by those things, then in no way, shape, or form are you really protecting a child. You are literally just taking away our rights from anybody. just because a child has access, children are gonna find access. Sorry, I got myself a little bit distracted today. So I'm gonna reset myself here. But preventing a child having the access to things, it should never be done by the government. It should be done locally on your dime. Because if you want, and then the other thing, that if you want to know everything about your child and what they're doing, then why and the other thing is you some of the other things that I always see is like people want to know everything about their child when they go to school and know what pronouns, or if they're changing their identity or things like that. That's fine, but it's like at the same time it's like, okay, then what but at the same time it's like, if your child is not wanting to tell you at home, because your child is basically telling you a different story, that means because they don't trust you and they aren't willing and to come out and trust you. Trust me, if I was somebody like that, did I trust my family when I said it the first time? No, I actually, in 2016, I did that. In 2016, I trusted somebody else, a friend of mine, that I trusted more. There must be a cop behind me while I'm there. Okay. Actually, we do need to go forward. Hopefully, well, they both go the same direction. But you cannot go out there and protect your child from everything. You can try and try, but they're gonna find ways. There's always, like, if you prevent a child from having access to it, let me be clear, I found so many places where, you know, where a child has access to this content through places like you know, finding it on the internet that don't have that protection. Okay, they don't have that protection because you go and access a site that's not operated in the United States, or operated on good faith in protecting the child, because there are sites out there that don't. I even have one. that doesn't. Now, of course, mine basically just links to other websites, but that's beside the point. It's like I don't have to follow these rules. I'm not in these states. I'm not gonna follow the rule. I don't have to follow the law. If the site, if you want access to the website, basically, then they can have access. I'm not gonna, if I get into trouble, it's the state's fault, not mine. I don't operate like that. Like that. And having access to the content, like, there are places out there that do not. And as of right now, until basically until most recently, Discord. Okay, Discord has access to adult content on these adult websites, on these things. I have another website that produces it that does not have, that I've gone through and I've looked into places that go to that I've gone to, that, you know, where I have access to not being access to the hub site, that blocks me from accessing it in, say, you know, I was in Texas using a VPN. And having access to that VPN, basically going through, okay, I use a VPN, I tunnel to Texas, and I still have access to adult content. Just because they block it in Texas doesn't mean that you still have access. Okay? Just because they block it, it does not prevent sites or other websites to allow you to have access to this content. I'm like, you can't really say that a child or these things are really protecting children when there are other ways, that unethical ways of having access to this content, that these kids do not have, that these sites do not follow, because they're not operating in, say a country that does not have to follow the laws. And yeah, they might block you here, but kids are going to find ways, they're going to find access, and they're going to find it. It's going to be harder, but they will find it. So if you're really there to say you want to protect a child, do it at the front, at your own home. Don't let the government decide what to do. Don't let OSs be directed by California and saying that there is a operating system. I think it was like FreeBSD is leaving. I think one operating system is not going to serve California anymore because of this ID verification. And some of these places, they say, oh well, this isn't a good thing. Like a lot of these places are going to find out that you're basically becoming a nanny state, basically forcing people to follow what you believe and follow the state rather than following on choice and giving people that opportunity to make those decisions. I am absolutely 100% for freedom to choose, and freedom to choose on a lot of things. I am freedom to choose that if a child wants to have access to the adult content, it's their choice. It's the parent's choice to make those decisions at the parent's choice, at the parent level. Parents should be taking care of that, not the state or not having um, having it. It should be done at the state level. Um, it is not right. Okay, it should be done at the home and allowing for it to be done that way. Because let me be clear, when I was 15, I had access to it. Guess what? I was 15. I still had ways of getting around certain blocks because all I did was basically we had this thing called Norton. Okay, many of you probably don't know. We had this Norton thing that basically all I did was just wrote in, basically sent an email why I had access to the website, and guess what happened? I still got around it. Okay? I still got around it because that's one way to get around these things and they're gonna find ways and more ways and finding a lot of ways to really um, to find ways to get around these things. And trust me, if a kid who knows how to um, if a kid knows how to access um, the content, or I should say, if the kid knows how to do programming, a kid's gonna find ways to get around these things. AI is going to find ways to get around a lot of this blocks. They're gonna find ways to do things if they are really wanting to do that and wanting to protect children from having access to it. Then why is Elon Musk's own Twitter? Okay, Elon Musk's X, pretty much, basically. I hate calling it X, but with X basically being a thing, that basically it's running rampant there that they have um, um, children being exploited on that platform. And like, what's the point if a child has access to it via that platform? Then guess what? Or if a child's being exploited on that platform, it's not stopping it. You're not stopping these kids from having access to the content. All you're doing is preventing the adult in the room having access to it as well because of it. But with X, it's basically trying to prevent that. Well, then why don't you do that with AI? Why don't you prevent that from having Grok create it? Why aren't you preventing these things, these other places? Not only with it, but that's a problem. Trump does not want to have AIs being regulated to create adult content for it would be constitution is that, which then in turns all these laws that were preventing child from having access, you now have to put ID to these AIs, which then these AIs can train on that data, and then your identity is stolen because you have to upload. It's a whole security problem. it's a lot of this is security issues, and a lot of this is not preventing these things from happening. You're just making things worse through all of this, and it's ridiculous. Okay, especially this OS one. Kids are gonna find around it by basically just allowing for it, and it's really horrible on what they're trying to do and what they're constituting to putting these children these parents and children through. Parents need to be better about policing their own children, to be honest. And stuff, and that's what should really be done. It shouldn't be. It's the same thing like with abortion. No, it's 3, 5, 26. Okay, it's the same thing where it should be done in the front of a doctor, a mother, and God. Okay, those are the 3 things that it should only be affected. Nobody else should be enforcing people on that regard. And that's the problem, is they're basically trying to control every aspect of your life, trying to make every aspect of your life to that point. See, they like you're somebody that, if you're somebody that supports the Second Amendment, the right to be able to have the Second Amendment right, but yet you don't want a child having access to adult content, it is basically the same thing. Because you're wanting to protect a child from that content, then why don't you prevent them from having access to a gun? Because that's worse than them watching adult content. Yes, adult content's bad, okay, but for children having access, it's the exact same thing, except one harms a child even worse than the other. And that's the problem, is they want to not, like, these red states don't want to police don't want the assault rifles bans. They don't want these things going on in these blue states that already are trying to pass these things. Then don't pass these ID require checks in your home state by allowing children to have access to this content. That's the whole point. That's why I am somebody that's against requiring ID checks. I'm against the requirement of having the banning of guns. If you want to protect a child, then require these ID checks and ban these guns at the forefront of all this. But no, it's a Second Amendment right. And it's also my First Amendment right as well. You're infringing on my First Amendment from having access to the content. They're infringing the First Amendment right even on LGBTQ issues. Okay? They're preventing a child from having access to LGBTQ content because we're just doing it because we're protecting the children. But you're not protecting the children with a gun. You basically should be getting rid of guns then at the same time. But yet you're not wanting to allow a child to have access to to reading material of an LGBTQ book. You don't want kids to have access to reading a book from those standpoint. LGBTQ people, okay, want that same freedom as just as like you. If you don't want a child reading that book, then don't check it out from the library for them. Don't. That's your choice. Okay? You have that right to not let your child have access. You have that right to go to whatever religion you want, but that religion should not be forced in school, forcing it onto many other people who belong to a Muslim, who belong to another denomination that believes in a different Bible than you. There's 150 plus different Bibles out there, okay, at least, and you're wanting to force one religion into these schools. If you want them to read the Bible in the school, then you have to also have a whole 150 different Bibles in the school to be able to be read and to be able to be taught from these different perspectives. But they don't want to do that. They want to force, like in Tennessee, they did this previously. I don't know if it's there now. They're wanting to force the Ten Commandments in these schools. But what about the Ten Commandments? Which Ten Commandments are you going to follow? Because there are some people that only follow the Moses Ten Commandments or the New Testament commandments or there are 10 commandments that follow that are not part of those, and they're part of the Quran, and you have all these different 10 commandments. Which 10 commandments are you going to put? They all want to put in their forced 10 commandments. It's the same thing. It's like, I don't care. A private school can do that. A private school is a private school. But a public school should not be forcing the 10 commandments, should not be forcing those things. A public school, fine, you can have the Constitution, you can have the Bill of Rights and these things that are part of the government. But a Ten Commandments is never part of the government. Okay? That is that point. Okay? Those are the things that need to be done in the accordance with the law of the First Amendment. Okay? And being done to prevent a child from, not preventing a child, but preventing the infringement of our First on it. So, anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there for today. And we'll be back tomorrow. So, anyway, make sure you guys hit that follow, hit that subscribe, and we will catch you guys, later. Make sure when you hit that bell notification with y'all as you subscribe, because you will not get updated if you don't. So